Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community was A-Class Corvettes. Our first race was at the Indianapolis Raceway. Unfortunately, lag would strike the cars at the front. A rather large crash would ensue. I somehow managed to avoid running into an almost stationary spark on the start-finish line. Lag was a little bit of a problem in this one, unfortunately. As a spark, I think it was in second or third on the road, sort of off the line, got bumped into by a laggy car, spun various vehicles across the track, and caused, it wasn't as bad a crash as it could have been. Luckily the start line's quite wide here, but yeah, it made a mess of the opening lap. A Chevelle then manages to phase through my Corvette. Physics shouldn't normally allow for two cars to be in the same place. It got confused. I managed to get relatively unscathed away from all of the chaos. However, other people weren't quite as lucky. I think, as far as I can tell, only two cars actually made it out without any damage at all, and that was the two at the front. I got through one of the best of the cars behind, but even I had various bits of damage across my car. Yeah, there was still plenty of racing going on as we come onto the banked section of the track. It looks like people are going to try 3 wide round the banked corner. In the end, the Stingray just runs out of grip. The Dodge Dart, very good handling, but struggling with straight line speed, and straight line speed is pretty damn important around Indianapolis as we come down the start-finish straight. The Chevelle is very easily passed. The Dart, another car, is lining him up into turn 1, but of course, under braking, the Dart will be one of the better cars of this little group. The Camaro, I think, ran perhaps a little bit too wide into turn 1. The Dart's right behind him, though he's still under threat from the Bel Air, I think it is, that's behind him into the next corner. The Dart is going sideways and does a little jump. It was a bit of a crazy start to this one. A bit later on, once the lag had calmed down a little bit, we find another group of 3 cars coming into the banked corner. The Chevelle tries to be very brave, go around the outside. Normally you don't really think about the banked corner here with a lot of cars, but with these it was pretty scary. Even in my fairly good handling Corvette, it was terrifying taking that banked corner. I would not have wanted to try and go around the outside of somebody on the banked corner. In the end, the Chevelle didn't even need to worry about it, as so much straight line speed can simply out-drag the Stingray and then out-brake him into turn 1. Stingray perhaps a little bit better on the handling front, but it's just too far back through these next corners to really try anything. At the front, as I said, 2 cars got away from the chaos, and it was 2 modern vehicles. I hadn't really expected the modern vehicles to do particularly well in this one, as most of them start right at the top of A-Class, so you don't have very much room for upgrades. I doubt either of these were running race tires. Certainly the Camaro wouldn't have been. As we come into turn 1, they are busy trying to avoid the laggy back marker. That's always scary. When that happens, as they run through the corners, while the Corvette was quicker at a straight line, the Camaro was far superior through these turns. Corvette just runs a little bit wide. Camaro can dive up the inside, and the Corvette has just got no answer. And while yes, you do need quite a bit of straight line speed around here, the Corvette is going to be too far back by the time they get through these corners to do anything about it. Further back, despite all of the lag and the many broken cars, there was still plenty of close racing going on. This C4 trying to go around the outside of a Stingray almost made it work at a very unlikely corner. Unfortunately for him, the Stingray was much quicker in a straight line. Also, Indianapolis can be quite a hard place to overtake. The first corner is a very big, obvious overtaking spot, but the rest of the track is mostly fast corners, or when you get to this section, very narrow. It's a tough place to overtake, especially if you don't have the straight line speed. It can be a real pain if you don't have the straight line speed and the car in front doesn't make any mistakes. But at the front, it was to be the Camaro that would take the first race victory. The Corvette stayed relatively close, but couldn't really keep up through the corners, and I would finish a rather distant third. Yeah, even without damage, I think I would have struggled to keep up with these 2. We move on to our second race. There were many C4 Corvettes in this one. I think there must have been 5 or 6 going into this race. I started on the front row, instantly out-dragged the cars around me, and had a lovely, clean, open track as we run into turn 1, which is always nice. After the last few times I've had fairly scary experiences at Laguna Seca, I could just sort of relax, scamper away, while everybody else filled the track in my rear view mirror, and a Spark goes for a little bit of rallycross. There was plenty of chaos behind me on this opening lap. The Spark up the inside of one of many C4 Corvettes. Spark runs a little bit wide, has a slight bump with another Corvette. It's side-by-side drag race up the hill for many a people. The C4 we're following goes to the inside. In the end, the white Corvette just runs out of road, which is a fairly common thing to have happen around here. And in front of this little group, the Spark had found himself in second as we head up to the corkscrew. Again, I just got that nice little breathing space to this gap behind, or to this group behind, sorry, on the opening lap. There were a few unusual cars, while it was mostly Corvettes as one slides past shot. There were a couple. There was a Spark in this one. There was also a Cobalt. Now the Cobalts have to remain front-wheel drive. I believe there isn't a drivetrain swap. And in A-Class, that's quite a lot of power you'll end up putting through the front wheels. This thing was mighty quick at a straight line. Caught up to two C4s in front of him. Unfortunately, the problem is you're probably going to be putting 400-ish horsepower through the front wheels. That tends to mean sort of coming out of corners and on the traction front. The Cobalt does struggle a little bit. Putting that much power through a front-wheel drive car makes it incredibly hard to drive. You can maybe just about get away with it in A-Class, but it's not really ideal. And the Cobalt was soon finding himself under threat from, you guessed it, there's another C4 as we run into one of the better overtaking opportunities here at Laguna. I'm still not entirely sure what happened to the yellow Corvette that suddenly dropped like a stone. The Cobalt's lost another position, but the C4 in front takes a slightly shallow line and is a little bit slow, a little bit out of position, ends across the sand. The Cobalt gets a great drive out of this corner, outdrags the black and red one, also outdrags the blue and white one. It would be an amazing overtake if the Cobalt had got stopped at the corkscrew. I'm not sure if he locked his brakes or if that's a slightly dodgy replay. It was on for one of the best overtakes I've seen. Unfortunately, just couldn't quite get the car stopped in time. By far the most exciting thing going on track was the battle for second. I had a lovely view of this. I spent most of my race looking in the rear view mirror, watching all the action unfold behind me with this group of three kind of unlikely vehicles. The Stingray led the way from the C4 Corvette and a Chevy Spark. The Stingray was by far the quicker of, I think, actually no, tell a lie. The Stingray and the Spark were both fairly equally quick in a straight line, both considerably quicker than the C4, but of course through the corners the C4 was a lot better. So they were setting very, very similar lap times. In fact, they were setting pretty damn similar lap times to me as well, although of course as they squabbled amongst themselves, slowed them down a little bit, never really put me under very much pressure. You see we come down this start finish line and the Stingray is just out of range really from the C4. The Corvette just can't get on the brakes late enough to get it stopped in time. And of course the C4 finds himself in the very tricky situation of, you know, you want to attack the car in front of you, but if you go all out attack, you've still got a car right behind you. It's very easy to lose a position like that. And the Spark was certainly no slouch. I wasn't expecting to see a Spark up sort of towards the front of these races. I thought they'd be too twitchy with this much power in them. To come down towards, as I said, a fairly good overtaking spot. All three cars are in a line, but the Stingray just has that speed. He can just remain out of range when they come to the braking zones, and even though he runs wide through the corner, he's just got the acceleration that the C4 doesn't have. The Spark tries to go around the outside, and this is a scary, very challenging move to do. Can't quite do it, ends up across the dirt. The Stingray ends up across the dirt as well, which slows his run towards the corkscrew, but again the C4 is just too far back. He can't do anything about it, and then through these next corners it's very hard to overtake. While yes, the Stingray doesn't quite have the grip, you still got to go a very long way round the outside if that's what you're going to try, and the Stingray will outdrag the C4 into whichever corner it might be. Again, Stingray going very, very defensive, or it looked like he was initially, just doesn't have to, because he can simply outdrag the C4 when they come on to the start-finish line. Even if the C4 gets a better run, he can't do anything with it. The Spark is now closing in on the back of the C4 vet. Yeah, it was pretty much a stalemate between these two. It was great fun watching them fighting behind me, and I do kind of wish I had been in it. But first call it exactly the same story. The C4 caught up and couldn't do anything about it. Further back we found, I've said C4 many times, as there were many of them. There was a train of them. going on here for, what was this, 5th, 6th and 7th? I think it was. The red and black one trying to go around the outside, can't quite make it stick. And of course, as they fight amongst themselves, the car at the front of the train can just pull that little bit of a gap, just get a little bit of safety as they fight through the next corner. It's always useful having the cars behind you squabbling over a position. You can see how much of a gap he's made as the cars fought. Later on, the Spark got an excellent run onto the start-finish straight. Has a dive up the inside into first corner. Very, very big dive, but just can't quite get it stopped in time. Runs a little bit wide. C4's back up the inside. Got the position back. This went on for the entirety of the 8-lap race. These lot just remained constantly fighting, and I remained just out of reach, just sitting nice and safely in first place, watching all the chaos unfold. This time the C4's got great drive through this next quarter as they come down one of the back straight, but he's still just about out of range. You would have to have such a huge dive into that corner, and the Stingray's just too good on the brakes to be able to pull that one off. As they come up the hill, the C4's struggling with that acceleration. The Spark's got to the inside and sure enough takes the position. Runs a little bit wide on the exit though, and now the Corvette is back past again as they head up to the corkscrew. Many changes of position were going on in this little group. Now they're all back to being nose to tail as they come out of the corkscrew. The C4's catching up to the Stingray despite fighting off the Spark, which is quite impressive to have managed that. The Spark though pulls off the overtake of the evening, managing to somehow go around the outside of the C4. I'm pretty sure there was a wheel on the dirt through there, and still gets it stopped as they come into braking for the final corner, and then the Spark can outdrag the Corvette. That's pretty damn hard to go around the outside of a car there, let alone the car that's probably a bit better handling. Yeah, they continued this battle. It raged for the entirety of the race and was by far the most exciting thing going on. On the final lap, the Stingray had just got a little bit of a gap back to these guys. As I said, these were fighting so hard over third place. They just let the Stingray escape a little bit up the row. The C4 has managed to get his third place back as they head up towards the top of the hill. Takes a defensive line. That's kind of a sort of a shallower line for that corner and ends up a little bit slow on the exit. And now the Spark can outdrag him up the hill as they come towards the corkscrew. It's side by side under braking, but the Spark, has got the inside line and can keep the position. C4 though right on his bumper as they run through these next corners. There is not much places for overtaking around here, but the Spark gets a little bit sideways. The C4's trying the spectacular around the outside and manages to get the move done as they head up towards the final corner, but again is very, very defensive, has to take a very shallow line through this final corner, and the Spark can do the cutback and has the acceleration to outdrag him across the line. I took the victory in this one, the Stingray took second, and there is a Spark on the podium, but only just. It was a titanic battle for second, third and fourth in this race. Great fun for me watching it. It was blooming exciting, that one. Our third and final race heads to the Sebring Club Circuit. 2 El Caminos found themselves on pole, which is always scary when you're sat there behind that to watching it. But everybody got around the first corner without too many issues, which is surprising considering the sort of the tightness of the hairpin you get at Sebring. As we run down the back straight, I can simply outdrive the Corvette, pull up alongside him and swoop around the outside. There's some more side-by-side action going on behind me, and El Camino's all across the curb. I get myself a little bit too close for comfort, trying to keep out of trouble a little bit. Camaros go around the outside of somebody in the background. I try to go around the outside of the El Camino, tried my luck a little bit too much. Bit of rallycross going on for my my Corvette. Unfortunately, everything could go wrong with a big bump into this next corner, and half the field ended up broken and in the wall. The Chevelle does a very good job of keeping out of trouble through there. Quite a few cars were broken in this one, including my Corvette. But at the front, the first lap was led, amazingly, by a Chevrolet El Camino. It may have started on pole, but it held off the field for the first lap, and this El Camino was phenomenally quick in a straight line. In fact, El Camino was in third at this point as well. Unfortunately, in traditional El Camino fashion, weren't the best handling of vehicles. I've said before that El Camino is... We had a tuning competition to find if one would be any good. They're not the best of race cars, and while this one had led the opening kind of lap and a half, it was really struggling to get stopped, to get turned. The C4 in second. It loses a lot of time on the straight, but it makes up so much more around the corners. The El Camino just can't fend it off. The C4's got to go all the way around the outside. We've got so much better brakes. It can simply outbrake the El Camino into the next corner. That was a little bit too wide from the C4. Just about gets away with it. I guess I wasn't the only one to find the grass out on that section. There was another Chevy Cobalt found itself in this race. Again, it was a similar story for this car. They had decent straight line. I was really surprised how quickly these things were going in a straight line. I thought they'd be mullered in a straight line. Of course, they weren't quite as fast as some of the muscle cars. The Chevelle, they're being a prime example of that. But they've certainly put up their own in a straight line, probably quicker than my C4. But it just doesn't have sort of the cornering, can't put the power down out of the corners. Once it gets going, it's alright, but just putting the power down out of the corners is where the Cobalt seemed to really, really struggle. The Chevelle was also considerably quicker. It pulled up alongside, very nearly did a move there from a long way back, and it wouldn't take very long for the Chevelle to just simply out-drag the Cobalt. Further up, the Chevelle continued to make progress through the field, catching up to the El Camino in third place, I think it was. Again, you can see the speed of the Chevelle. The El Camino was certainly no slouch in a straight line. Chevelle just glides past. Fits up a very small gap up the inside. Good overtake that one to get up the inside there. The El Camino trying to fight back. Got on two wheels as well, which is impressive for an El Camino. But yeah, in the end, the Chevelle was just too quick. There was not much. I think the Chevelle went on to set a fastest lap as well. Despite all the broken vehicles in this one, there was still some racing going on further back, which is what I like to see. There were some, I think a few of us had to just sort of pull our cars off the road because they were simply too dangerous to drive, but some could carry on. I think this was over 11th or something, between a Camaro, a Stingray with a humongous hood scoop, and a modern Camaro in the background. Of course, as the two cars at the front battled with each other, they slowed each other down. The modern Camaro caught up huge gains as these two squabbled over their position. The Stingrays got to the inside. Camaro, you were a bit out of luck trying to go around the outside of there. Very, very tough to do. Tries to do a cutback. Unfortunately, just doesn't have the power. Probably through damage, as his engine is possibly smoking. And then things start to go a little bit weird. Just cars everywhere. Cars everywhere. No, wait. There we go. We're fine again. Nothing bad happened. I don't ask. I have no clue. Somehow the blue Camaro lost out in all of that. Anyway, at the front, it was to be the C4 Corvette that would take the victory. Not quite as an action-packed race as it had been at Laguna Seca. It wasn't also a huge margin of victory for the C4. There is a Camaro, you're just about to see it in the background, that would take second. And amazingly, an El Camino would get on the podium with a third place finish. You can just about see the Camaro and El Camino there in the background. El Camino on the podium is pretty impressive. I'm not sure what I'm more surprised by, the Spark or the El Camino. Both are, yeah, both are quite impressive. And also, just to show you the damage done to my car, I've never had this happen to me on Forza. All the times I played Forza 4, never had this much damage done to my car. It basically killed all of my brakes, the impact. So I put the brakes here at the 300 meter board, or where it would be. My Corvette doesn't stop. It just absolutely never stopped. Never seen that happen before. On Forza 4, I didn't realise it would do that. It's happened on Forza 5. I never realised that it would kill the car in such a way on Forza 4, but there you go, you can utterly destroy the brakes. My car was hopelessly broken in that final one. But there we go. It was a shame for some of the lag. Unfortunately, I can't really do a huge amount about it on Forza. The second race was phenomenal there. Laguna Seca, there was so much going on, very, very hard. To edit that, there's loads and loads of action going on in that one. And I actually managed to build a C4 Corvette that worked. I tried a few times for various versus community, could never get them to work, but in this one, mine was not too bad. Anyway, that is it for this versus the community, guys. The next one shall be held on Thursday, the 14th of August. We shall be running open E-Class cars. Yeah, any car in E-Class. I'm just going to say, you know, the top drivers, people who regularly win these and do well, don't use the leaderboard cars, make it more interesting. But yeah, we're going to be running open E-Class cars on fairly smallish tracks. Not quite the sort of the ultimate short course ones, but it'll be run on appropriate tracks for the cars. If you wish to sign up, then you can on our forums. There will be a link in the description. Find the FailRace vs Community section, and you sign up in there. The races shall start at 7 PM British Summer Time. Anyway, that is it for today. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.